Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We broadcast 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time on Genesis Communications Network. We're delighted you're here with us. Jason is engineering the broadcast at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Richard Alan Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Well, I'm intimidated. I'm not sure where we're going to go, but it's scaring me.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Is it
no calls.
Tread? Which?
All right. So, class, we're not going to take calls today. So sit back and relax. And at the end of the broadcast,
it's going to be a bumpy one.
And it's going to be bumpy. At the end of today's broadcast, we will cement how an international scandal of deception, intrigue, and disloyalty has rocked a monarchy to its core. Story broke last night. We're going to tie this all together and show you how this is done. You'll need to pay complete attention for 2 hours if you want a grade of A in this class. Double speak starts now. As always, thank you for continuing to stay with us for the previous hour. What follows before we began will be quite different in many ways from what previously was never mentioned. Dr. Richard Alan Miller and I will continue discussing the adaptive educational system currently being proven in American city schools to inversely increase proficiency in reading, writing, mathematics, science, and history, while simultaneously demonstrating that overall performance reductions can easily be achieved by the absence of knowledgeable teachers, increased emphasis on computer software expenditures.
Right, for example, why is it they call it the 3 R's when they don't even begin with an R? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Why are those called the 3 R's?
Well,
that's a good place to start.
Right. Well, that proves the thesis right there.
Well, then there it is. Read it and sweep.
It's widely known that students in the American schools have proven that they universally understand the physics of turning a flat-screen television front to back because that reduces the coefficient of drag when sprinting down a city street, something that they share and put into practice with the starting line beginning at a big box store, commonly known as TV Hall Sprint. Empirical studies led to the science and performance testing of sprinting and jumping over fences with televisions. This concept has expanded to unscheduled events with larger and larger televisions. Currently, this is a one-person event and is not to be confused with the flash mob kleptocracy sport that has, it involves edible snacks, sodas, and convenience stores. Rick, your thoughts?
I'm lost. I thought the Nike was a missile.
Well, Nike works really well.
That it's no longer a Shylark, it's a Shylight. And it has something to do with red. How does that work?
Well, you're absolutely right. Red seems to be the sneaker color of choice for the TV hall. Because if you notice, well, it's hard to notice sometimes because sometimes it's done at night or in the evening. But when these guys race down the city streets with those TVs, a lot of them wear Nikes. I mean, they wear New Balance as well, but most of them wear...
Does that mean they're radioactive? No.
Well,
but what is the light? Why? So they can watch the footwork? I'm lost.
Well, no, you should not be lost, Rick, because how would you judge who won if you can't see their sneakers? How would you know?
Why do they call them sneakers?
Well, because that's what they used to take the TVs out of the big box stores.
I thought that had to do with the draft that they were doing when they tilted it sideways.
No, okay, that draft, that reduction, you can't run with a TV facing the wind like a billboard. You can't do that. It would slow you down.
Well, why don't I put it up on my wall like that then? I'm getting confused here. The physics of it is lost in the interim, between spaces. I'm sorry, did I lose you too?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
I thought that, no.
And that's called fog index. The idea of, dangling participles. How much literacy is actually present in American school systems today? How many people know what the difference between a simile and an automatopoeia?
How about this?
Between a simile, is it similar? No, a simile is different than a similar, but they're not the same. They sound the same. So sound isn't necessarily the way something is spelled. It's the way it's pronounced. Pronounced? No, pronounced. I'm getting confused because of the language and the southern drawl.
Well, you shouldn't get confused because normally, except for maybe today and 3 other times, we have spoken proper English. However, on television, if you notice, even in the series Jericho, which I highly recommend to our class as a first step in learning about preparedness and how things can go sideways very, very quickly, there's a scene where there's this gal who's supposed to be the high school science whiz. Okay, she's in there, and she says, well, it's the brushers, BRUSHERS, as in electric motor brushes. She doesn't even say it right. She's supposed to be the whiz. She can't pronounce it. And the guy who wrote it...
Like in Daybreak, the really smart ones are the drug dealers, and usually they're advanced in school, and they actually haven't learned a thing.
Mm-hmm. And then yeah. So what I'm saying is, I turned on to see the closed captioning, so I could see. Did she really say brushers when she meant electric motor brushes? She did. And then there was another series that I happened to catch, and there was this inner city guy, and he loves this beautiful Southern belle. And he says something tantamount to, he loved her. And what he really meant was he loves her. But it came out in his natural speech pattern incorrectly because he couldn't remember his lines or couldn't deliver his lines. He loved her. And that's how far we have fallen. So that even TV is teaching you how to speak improperly.
Right?
Well, that's something we don't do as well.
We always, like today, the millennials will say, right? Is that, do you get what I'm trying to say, right?
Well, I do get what you're trying to say.
I get confused in terms of direction like that. It's as if they're trying to move you in one direction because of their language, right?
Yes, and not only that, we have removed cursive writing from the classroom so that our students can become even more inept at everything they attempt to do.
Do you know what the real purpose of cursive was about?
Well, I know one purpose was faster. So you don't have to lift.
Then
So you don't have to
working
lift.
from mechanical drawing where you spent your time making more precision E.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and
to be distinguished from an S.
I print a lot, and I draw each letter. And it takes drawer, D-R-A-W-E-R. That's newspeak for D-R-A-W.
I see. Thank you.
So I draw each letter, and a lot of times I was in front of the classroom teaching, and we'll call it the blackboard, and I don't put the tops on a capital E. So I have everything except the top line on the capital E. And my student said, Mr. Finelli, you didn't form that letter properly. And I said, I know, because I figure if I leave off the top of every E that I draw in my life, I'm probably going to save 10 seconds. Any comments? Have you found shortcuts like that?
Magazine said about that, because it said just before the rush hits, a giant 6-foot waffle iron is going to giggle at you. If you're enjoying it now, wait till the rush hits. That's a direct quote from Mad Magazine.
Mm-hmm. So the reason for cursive writing was that if you draw your letters, you have to actually lift up the pen if you're using a pen, so that you don't drag the point of the pen across the paper and connect letters. But then it was found out that if we just modify the style of writing a little bit, you won't have to lift up your pen.
Well, I only
stop,
do it
start,
when
stop,
I do an
stop.
X.
Yeah.
I just draw
Otherwise,
an X. They want my signature, and actually it doesn't matter. Even at Walmart, all I have to do is put an X, and that's good.
Yeah, I draw pictures, and, I draw like houses and things like that. When they, sometimes they'll say your signature, and I'll just scribble. I'll make some swoops, some dashes, dot, 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 and they'll say, good, that's okay. No one questions my signature, no matter what it looks like, whether it looks like a 4-year-old drawing a picture of the first house with a crayon on a piece of paper, or whether I actually sign my name. And I intentionally sign my name generally differently every time I sign my name, differently. And just
that when I try to sign my name, I'm going downhill with old age, and now it's more like a scrawl.
Okay.
Shaw? What?
So
What is a scrawl?
just as a side note,
Is that like a wind?
we use checks here at the farm. We write people checks. So we have records. The old-fashioned, we use yellow or blue or green, different colors for different accounts. And on the checks, they generally don't say Vincent Finelli. They say something else. Sometimes they just say 2 letters. 2 letters. No social security number, no address, no business name, no phone number, just 2 letters. And it could be AB, for example, or DL, or RC. 2 letters.
That's
And
where the
if anyone
check
steals
first
those-
started, was when Rothschild took a napkin and wrote on it $100 bill.
Right. Hold that thought. So for just a few seconds, we'll go back to the checks. So we have checks that have a couple letters, in the place of where a person's name would be. So instead of saying Vincent Finelli or Mrs. Finelli or something like that, it just has a couple letters. And the point of that is, if someone were to steal our checks and try to forge our signature, and they sign them AB or DE or whatever they see on these checks, I would simply go to the bank and say, "Well, you really think that's my signature? Why would I do that? You've never seen that before. It's a forgery. So why don't you go and press charges against the forger?" So just a little thought there. And before we begin, Rick, we should consider the reason for and the adaptation reluctance. when time permits. And if you have any questions pertaining to the reason, you know, Rick and I have researched today's topic and suggest concordance and your personal reflection. The Fleisch-Kincaid reading level, as measured in the public school grade levels for today's broadcast, is 27. That means you would need to be at the 27th grade level or above to fully understand the meaning. Now, while the terminology is different, the meanings are different and separate and should not be confused with the original meaning. And please understand that when we act on decisions that pervade and the persistent, independent, and indifferent biases and subculture, you may want to consult or consider the solution rather than common repleneration or others. Rick?
Well, I looked up the definition of doublespeak, and it said used to deceive, usually through concealment or misrepresentation of truth. Now, gobbledygook, disapproving, is different, but the reason I'm mentioning this is because right under it is newspeak, cognitive dissonance, and then thought crime. Now, with that said, when you talk about servicing the target is a doublespeak for getting prepared to bomb that area. This is servicing is a military thing that they do so that they try to make it sound like it isn't. And I've had enough of doublespeak and newspeak and cognitive dissonance in the media to the point where I'm going to start saying, I watched a movie yesterday called Bombshell about Meghan Kelly and her trip with Fox News. And I remember when Fox News first started to come on the scene just about the time that Altered Walter was retiring and CBS was still holding #1 rating as for the accuracy of the news with Dan Rather. Now, Dan Rather is where it all started to go downhill. And CNN and Fox News were the alternative media that they called alternative media that today is the primary. And that individual that ran that was a sexist. I mean, he was out to get as much nookie as he possibly could get from the top-end bombshells that he would put on the air as leading anchors. Did anybody get the hidden meaning of what I just talked about? Probably not, because the redundancy coefficient in what I just said is running around 9. And that's called scientific writing.
So the three major networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, at the time you're discussing this, would have the same news on at the same time. So if you watch the 6 o'clock news, you would see the same stories. It's almost like they got together and they had a committee meeting and said, okay, what are we going to do first? Okay, I got it. What's the second story? Okay, got it. And what are we going to end with? Got it. And they would all deliver the same story almost every time in the same order. Collusion.
In the same building as Fox News. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Yep. More on doublespeak, newspeak, and cognitive dissonance when we come back. And we're going to tie this all together, class. Seriously. We are going to tie this together with a scandal you won't believe. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Alan Miller is with us, and we've been talking about undersea cavitation. Class, be sure to do your own research, because as this may become part of my doctoral thesis, which is an attempt to conclusively prove without any doubt that focused conscious thought can be minimized to a degree heretofore never believed possible. And furthermore, to demonstrate... Well... And furthermore,
I love you. You're so weird. Really. I don't even have to practice to be able to play this game because of my vocabulary. The problem is that it's being used with intent today. And they're teaching it in schools with intent. And this thing that you talked to me about the royal family, I can't believe it. It is typical, right?
Well, don't say it right yet, because we're still proving this point.
Is a expression now used by the Gen X's, right? It's a way of ending a sentence, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And this slang, that's what it is, it's called slang, has interfered with dialect, which is different than pronunciation, and the West Coast is generally considered what's the word I'm looking for? Variation in the pronunciation of something. The difference between creek and crick. Yeah. And I remember when in the movie Clue, when who's that little tiny guy that was at war with? He plays the center of it. Truman Capote. It is the thing. It's not the thing. It's the thing. And I remember when he went off on his little tyrant like that in the pronunciations of how to say something correctly. And I'm watching how nobody has any form of diction anymore. It's lost. And we all get and we have what we call Zoom speak, where we pick up each other's thoughts to the point where I don't have to, and you say finish the conversation because you've already been there and we're on the same page.
Mm-hmm. So, Rick, this may become part of my doctoral thesis, which is an attempt to conclusively prove.
What university is that going to be at?
Well, we're going to find out.
Schweitzer University.
We're going to find out, without any doubt, that focused, conscious thought can be minimized to a degree heretofore never believed possible. And furthermore,
body language.
There is
gestures with the eye. The way the eye goes up, down, sideways, like a snake.
Huh? Well, okay, so we can furthermore demonstrate that in the American body, well, the body mass indices, that can be increased without any effort whatsoever. So,
I'm watching this thing about Lizzie, the big fat woman that's a singer and plays musical instruments, and Chubby Chubs with her back. And she's got back. Now, I don't get it when somebody else says she should worry about getting diabetes and then gets slammed for criticizing somebody that's overweight. In Oregon, right now, 1 in 4 people is obese. I'm not talking about fat, 20 or 30 pounds over. I'm talking about being obese. Now, how does that happen in a mountain state like we are in Oregon? Well,
Rick, I just said it. I said
about education and how we have lost the race. It used to be we were proud that the United States, their general educational system was like 7th or 8th in the world. Today we're less than 12th.
Yeah, and California used to be one of the best in the country, if not the best at one time. Now, Rick, I just said it. I said, and furthermore, to demonstrate that in America, body mass indices can be increased without any effort whatsoever. What I'm saying is, you can sit in front of your TV and reach over for that button and change the channel.
That's it. There it is. More to love.
Yeah, mortal, and so without any effort whatsoever, we can become fatter. That's what I said. And okay, so while some have convoluted iterations, they've devolved to pernicious levels. A few have reached it. And
did you say pernicious?
I did.
That's wonderful.
I said, quote, while some convoluted iterations have devolved to pernicious levels, a few have reached. Period. End quote.
End of sentence.
Yeah.
A dangling participle. There it is. It hung by the neck until guilty.
So, all right. So we realize that doublespeak has invaded our lives and will soon be upon us. Actually, right now.
Soon. It's
right
what
now.
The media is putting. They call it newspeak now.
Yeah. Okay. So millennials are now using a single letter to denote a word or words.
Like
symbols
for Iran.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, that's what I have several fans now trying to play with me by using initials to see if I can respond and pick up. Like they're trying to be elusive to see if we're on the same page. And I would rather go back to more scholastic forms where in second grade they taught me Latin.
Okay.
Sum est sunt.
Yeah, and cavita emptor. So, Rick, seriously, I'm very serious about this. Millennials are now using a single letter to denote a word or words. They're using symbols to denote words.
Yeah,
and
like
emoji.
Emois or ejoys or whatever they call those.
Emoji. Emoji.
What is it called?
Emoji. E-M-O-J-I. They're
Where
using
did that
emoji.
word come from?
Well, I think it was a committee. It had to be a committee. No one could come up with that by himself or herself. So they're using emoji
themselves, or itself, or
itself.
Whatever.
Excuse me. I misspoke.
There's creepy things going on now.
All right, so they're using emoji to convey how they emotionally feel about something. Soon, they'll be able to say something by blinking with one eye. But understanding what they just tried to say will be another thing. But at least they won't burn extra calories trying to use words that they forgot.
When I tried to do that, I got my face slapped. I tried to communicate something with a single blink of one eye, and she slapped me.
Well, that's okay. One problem, okay, in that line of thinking, one problem might very well be that the single one-eyed blink might mean I'd like to order that extra sweet latte rather than the triple sweet latte. Now, what would happen? Well, that would result in the need to use actual words for clarification, such as, "What's the matter with you? Didn't you see what I was saying?"
You could have a stuttering eye.
People send me these cryptic, silly, juvenile, incomplete emails that they obviously are sending with their phone. And I don't read them anymore because I can't understand what they say. Number one, it's out of context. They know what they mean, but how could anybody else know what they mean if we are not in the same room, building, or even county? How could we know?
Or the same century.
Well, people have come to our farmhouse and they say, "Well, Sarah said," or they'd say, "Yeah, Sarah always does." Who's Sarah? I don't know. I've never met Sarah.
Isn't she that female prepper, the nurse or something?
Well, she could be. I have no idea who Sarah is.
She could be. The goose is cooked. I'll tell you, the whole thing is nuts and needs to be exposed for what it is and what it is not.
Okay,
Just like in the
so
comic books. Even in comic books, Dr. Strange has complete sentences.
Let's take it to the next level. So the patient's lying down in the bed, not doing so well. Nurse is there, the doctor's there, doctor winks at the nurse. And what's that supposed to mean? 10 cc's or 1 cc? Or bedpan? What does it mean?
They leave the room.
Right, after they neglect the patient. That's right.
Yeah, there it is. That's what it means. In modern medicine, none of it's real. It's all about sex, rock and roll, and drugs.
One of the salient points of today's discussion is that we are using newspeak, doublespeak, double talk, and we are not, yes, gobbledygook, gibberish. We are not using complete sentences to convey our thoughts. And that's why we're making so many mistakes, huge mistakes. And we have gotten so forgetful that someone will go to the store and say, I'm here. Well, what was I supposed to get?
Because people are now texting where they're using shortcuts because they're typing with a thumb.
Right. And they're not using cursive. They're not running through their brain the long form of the thought that they are currently working upon.
And as such, what happens next is the fog index goes down to 0. And they're not communicating. What it is gibberish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
and, I have...
And that's why Nero fiddled.
I was in an elevator in a government building here in Missouri. It was a city building, and I was going from the ground floor up to the floor I needed to conduct business on. And I noticed that the people, you could tell the government employees, they dress differently than the customers or the people subject to their rules like us. And the people who are government employees use that opportunity to gossip in the elevator. It's like, did you see Susie? Did you see that donut she had? I can't believe she had that donut. Her, Susie, gosh. And I don't know if it was jealousy. Maybe her donut was bigger or had more glaze on it, or she had 2 donuts instead of 1. I don't know. But if you notice, in government settings, when these people have time to themselves, they talk about other people in the government. That's what they do. They're little people. They're jealous. And then you add to that what happens when other people who are not really intellectually challenged, or people who people who are intellectually challenged, they talk about other people too. You can go to a little party and they talk about people. They don't talk about, boy, what's the best tool? How can you sharpen that tool? How can you make it more efficient? No, little people talk about people rather than ideas, concepts, things, innovation, and so forth. Doublespeak continues when we come back after these few short commercial announcements. So widely known is the retentive nature, or for the most part, inattentive nature of those remotely and partially participating in the auditory event currently transpiring. And if we refer to the previous thoughts, it will necessitate the consumption of more calories to use words as compared to blinking our thoughts. But the benefit will be fewer errors and fewer discarded lattes. Now, please turn your attention to advertising commercials in general, not in specific, but in general, television as well as radio. And you'll hear terms such as scientifically tested, patented technology, widely believed. What is widely believed? Well, it could be one person in the United States of America believes the same thing as one person in England believes. That's widely believed. It's separated by
widely.
Yeah.
And they're quoting him.
Right. And so the person in the United States and the person in England, that's widely separated by 3,500 miles of saline solution. So could they say definitively patented technology? Well, pretty darn much everything is patented technology. Widely believed, I just said that. Scientifically tested, you can take a light bulb and drop it and say, geez, it just broke. Well, it's scientifically tested. This light bulb is scientifically tested. You know, gravity is still there. It's still instantaneous, and the darn bulb broke. But they don't say that. They say it's scientifically tested. So what I'm trying to convey is that you do listen, and you do listen to these outlandish, ridiculous claims that sound like they are significant, real, and you should be swayed by them. I'm very serious about that. It frosts me when I hear terms like patented technology. Literally, if you take a rotary mower and mow your lawn with it, there are probably 100 separate patents that have been issued regarding that rotary mower. From the shape of the handle that you pull the cord to start the engine, to the needle valve in the carburetor, to the butterfly valve in the carburetor, to the tip of the spark plug, to the cap on the spark plug, to the spark plug boot, to the materials in the paint,
and
to
then
the
you
bearing
shake
types.
it all about, and that's called the hokey pokey.
Right. So I farm using patented technology. There's no question about it. If you use a curling iron in the morning, you're using patented technology. Lots of patents. From the plug to the cord to the little line on one side of that zip.
Why are schools teaching this as part of the curriculum?
Would you repeat that one more time, please? Why
are the schools teaching this now as part of their curriculum?
I think we are getting fully immersed in a society of me first. I want it now, not later. I deserve to be happy, and those around me better make me happy, or else. I think we are teaching people that it's okay to have a sports team for school, and just showing up would be kind of good. That way you can get your trophy. It would be a little better if you tried, but you don't have to try too hard because then you'll show up the other people. That's where we are today.
Allow cell phones in the classroom?
They do, and
what?
They do. I talked on air with Marty Barrett. She is a USA Prepares instructor. She teaches at the college level. She teaches the hard science, biology, and she cannot get the students to put those cell phones down. They sit in a large classroom of about 70 people, and they're looking down at their cell phones, not paying attention completely to what's happening. It's impossible to text and pay attention to the hard sciences. So, let me ask you this. Do you think that a cell phone is appropriate in the operating room? My doctor, who is a specialist, who does checkups on me just to make sure I'm doing better and better and better. He has a sign in his office. He is a no nonsense guy. It says, if you use your cell phone, you will have to reschedule your appointment. He walks out. So, and I've talked to another doctor who's my doctor, an internist, and she says that she's giving that 7-minute brief to her patients, and the cell phone rings and they take the call. They've got 7 minutes and they waste it. That's where we are, Rick. This has got to stop, because the cell phone, I think, is one of the single most destructive thing that has ever been created for society. I believe the cell phone is number one. I'd love to hear your comments when we come back. We have more doublespeak. This is serious, class. There's a lot of humor in this. I hope you're getting it, but we're going to tie it all together, and you won't believe the end of the story. You won't believe it, but it's absolutely true when we get to the end. We'll be back. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Alan Miller is with us. And you can go to his website, richardalanmiller.com, and you might want to get his newest book, ESP, Induction Through Forms of Self-Hypnosis. And this is 2nd edition. I have a copy. Mine is number 18. Rick assigned me that number. Thank you so much for that, Rick. Class, I mentioned that turn your attention to advertising, commercials, TV, and radio, and they use specific terminology. At the top of the hour, now this is very risky, so I have to be careful how I say this. So I don't want to give specific examples. That's for you to determine exactly what I'm talking about, because it's the kiss of death for me if I do it. So at the top of the hour, news and commercials, there were at least 2 examples of exactly what we have been talking about during this somewhat humorous discussion about newspeak, doublespeak, etc. I hope that you heard them. And at the end of this broadcast today, Rick and I will be dissecting one of them. Now, we knew this was a huge scandal, and it happened last night, so we're going to talk about that. But, Rick, the cell phone, I said something akin to, I believe it's the single most destructive thing to, it's destroying humanity. I believe it's the single most destructive.
Well, it's taking down our current society.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that part. It's crumbling because of it.
Mm-hmm. And that includes the electromagnetic radiation plus the wars over scarce resources. Plus
I haven't even begun on that part. That part alone is a whole different argument altogether. No, I'm talking about just in the way people drive with their cell phone.
Yeah.
The way they behave in public.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like they're zombies.
Right. USA Prepares is widely enigmatic when considering the entire class, inclusive of students, instructors, and soon-to-be instructors as nominative. And to that end, it's re-endeared without compilation nor redemption. As you consider the postulates and reunifications, remember, the last 3 times that we discussed this, Dr. Richard Alan Miller and I were discussing the post-precursors and about the first U.S. satellite launched in space during the early pneumatic telepathy years, specifically commonly known as Satellite Echo 1. What was not known then was that there were a total of 9 Echo satellites, the first being known as Echo, followed by Echo 1, Echo 2, Echo 3, Echo 4, 5, 6, 7, and finally Echo 8. Rick, your thoughts?
I don't even know where to go, except did I hear you say something about Hollow Earth?
Well, that was during the previous segment. We were talking about the Hollow Earth and the electromagnetic diffusion.
Oh, not Hollow. I guess it was Echo. Sorry,
yeah,
I misunderstood. Yeah,
right. We were talking about the satellite Echo and how it was very difficult, extremely difficult to put this ball on top of the rocket. You know, this inflated ball, and they wanted to use hydrogen. Because
I thought that was Geico.
Geico, government employees insurance.
No, I thought it was
company.
Geico. 70 years of service. We're not going to use those ads anymore.
Thank God. And that gal in the white uniform, that ditzy brunette. I hope we don't have to have her anymore either.
Ooh, I remember her. Ooh,
she's awful. Awful. And, oh, by the way,
she had a hypodermic strapped to her thigh. I saw they called her Dr. Caligari. Was it Dr. Caligari? Nurse Ratched. That's who it was. It was Nurse Ratched.
So the problem is the misuse of words, the fact that we are reducing our lexicon to blinking and single letters like the letter U, that sometimes means Y-O-U, and a smiling 2 characters, a colon and a right paren, to indicate happy. But no one really understands about what. I think it's too vague.
You nailed that one, boy. I'll tell you that. About what?
Right. About what?
Pharrell Williams, that's what it's about. And the lawsuits that ensued after everybody was happy.
Well, and really, seriously, young people think that it is okay to communicate with very few characters. I was talking with Marty Barrett, and I mentioned that she is an instructor for biology at the college level. And one of her students came up to her after a test and said, "Oh, what are you doing? There's You're asking me to write paragraphs about biology? I've never had one of these kind of tests before. I'm used to multiple guess, where you have 4 choices and you got a 25% chance of getting it right. Like in this situation, do we give the patient 1/10 of a cc, 1 cc, 10 cc's, or 100 cc's? I thought, it's going to be like that. So when I'm a nurse, I can go to the patient and say, I can't remember what he said. The doctor said something about cc's. Well, I don't want to give him too little. Let's go with 10. That's where we are. Death by decimal. Because of the generally accepted lowering of standards in the educational institution. As a matter of fact,
when they came up with that decimal system, who actually was Dewey?
Yeah, or don't he? Or would he? Or wouldn't he? We don't know. But here's what happened. I was told by one of our instructors who teaches classes at the post-high school level. Okay, we'll say college. We'll say university. So this instructor has been doing it for years. And the assignment is now, tell you what we're going to do. See, we're going to do online classes. Online. You don't have to come to school. You can sit in front of your computer. Actually, it'd be better if you had 2 computers. One that you can read the questions, and another one where you can find the answers, and then you can take your test with 2 computers. That way you can look up the answers.
Only it's not an open book, it's an open computer.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's happening, we were talking about in class, the cell phones. The students will use a cell phone. What's number 3? What's the answer to number 3? Get number 3. Is it A, B, C, or D? And that's why some instructors, such as Marty Barrett, ask the students to answer to the best of your ability incomplete thoughts. We're using complete sentences and real words. Answer these questions. So the students are at a real disadvantage because, number one, they're going to have to learn. They're going to have to use the thought process. Number 2, they're going to have to use a lexicon. Number 3, they're going to have to put that lexicon in a structure that has noun, verbs, and adjectives and adverbs, and punctuation. They're going to have to do all that and be cogent all at the same time, and they can't do it. And that's another reason why the cell phone is, in my opinion, the single most destructive thing ever developed heretofore.
What year was that?
Well, it was Steve Jobs. It was Google. It was, there are a lot of cell phone.
Musk, let's not forget Tesla. Gosh.
People say he's bright. I beg to differ. When he has his boring machine that drills holes in the ground, that's not new. We've had subways for over 100 years. Okay, so he wants to put satellites.
Get a grip. There's tunnels that go from Ireland all the way down to Turkey. Did you know that?
Well,
I didn't
I've
know
read
that,
things
and
like
there they are.
Okay, so his boring machine, with high-speed rail, it's not new. It's just going faster. And satellites, he wants to put satellites in space, 5G. Well, that's destructive, too. And satellites aren't new. We've had satellites since Sputnik, the late 1950s. And we've talked about the satellite.
There was an actual article that came out that said that 5G technology was the 5th generation.
Yeah.
That's why they called it 5G. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe the fact that they said, the 6th generation, because there can't be a 6th generation. You know why? There's nothing smaller than microwave band.
There's nothing smaller that we know of that we can build.
Oh, then there it is. That's exactly correct.
Well, there's another thing. Since we've gone on a tangent here, so what is it? We used to have processors that were 4 million cycles per second, or 4 megahertz, and then 8. That was a big deal because that was 2x, right? And then we went to 16, That was 4x. Then 20, 25, 30, 33, 50, 100, 250, 300, 333, 500, 750, 800, 1,000, and we crept on up, and we hit the wall at about 3 gigahertz, or 3,000 megahertz. Okay, we hit the wall. Then we go a little faster, but we can't seem to go faster than that. So this doubling every couple of years or every year stopped because we can't do it anymore. Why? Why can't we do it anymore? Because we can't make the circuits any smaller, any thinner, or any closer together. We don't know how to do it because that's what we need to do. We need to do 2 things. Make the circuitry closer together. I'm talking about these, we'll call them integrated circuits or chips or processors or memory product circuits. We can't make them any smaller. And simultaneously, as they get smaller, we have to dissipate the heat. But we can't dissipate.
When digital went to analog, not the other way around, but when we had and, or, and not, and then we came up with NOR, NAND logic, which was object-oriented. And that allowed us to group into similar differences and different similarities, which was different than holographic.
Rick, did you know that Mrs. Finelli programmed for some of the largest corporations in the world using assembler language? Exactly what you're talking about? Exactly what you're talking about? Literally.
Exactly. Where you had a redundancy coefficient that was more efficient because it was neither this nor it was that. And it was called NOR NAND logic.
Fear continued cracking on deployment and instantly became useless. So, as previously discussed, Bakelite was the forerunner of plastic, and the 9th satellite in the program was actually constructed of Mylar, and it worked. And in order to conceal our failures in the space race, I'm talking about the United States failures in the space race with Russia, we hid the results of the 8 previous launches and just reported on live television that the launch was delayed for technical reasons. All the networks were involved in coordinated conclusion and cover-up and had game shows queued and ready to run, which is why we know that Americans have such a short attention span. They were watching the space launch. They said, oh, there's a technical problem, and they'd run a game show. And one of them was called The Price is What? The Price is What? And people loved guessing what the price was. And that show ran, interrupting live space launch coverage, and the television consumers forgot all about the satellite launches. And that is where the tape delay system got its start. And that tape delay system was still in use during the previous administration when Barry would forget his glasses and couldn't read his lines. And that's when the vice president would reach behind that pretty girl on the stage, and they had to edit out that part where he reached her behind on stage.
I know, isn't it wonderful? It's just, the whole thing is a mess. You ought to start with the King and Queen of England now, and
that's
let them know how bad that all is. It's just,
okay.
I can't, do it, Vincent, because there's a lot to be said here.
Okay, so class, Newspeak has just ended. Doublespeak has just ended. We're not going to do any more of our, humor, okay? So that has ended, and now we are back into reality. So for the last couple of weeks, I have been talking to Rick about doing this class on doublespeak, and I was passionate about it. And some people said, you've lost your mind. Why are you wasting time on this? And I got some heat. Some people said, wow, it's really kind of clever, and I thought, it's hysterical, and thank you for doing it. But a few didn't like it. Now, there was a reason why I did this. When I was teaching in the meetups for 5 years, I slowly moved the discussion from storing matches for 20 years in a jar and how to do that to teaching people how to think and how to dissect what they hear. Kind of like scientifically tested, using patented technology, widely known.
Government approved.
Government approved, things like that. So I moved from that to teaching people how to think, and they got mad at me. They said they didn't want to know that. They just wanted to know, what kind of jar to use to store those matches, and what kind of matches, and how many matches, and things like that. And I refused to do it. I said, I don't want to do that. I'm not interested in doing that. Well, so over the last couple of weeks, in that line of thinking, I'm thinking about earning my doctoral degree. I'm very serious about that. I have a master's, actually more than a master's, but less than a doctorate. So I'm thinking maybe I should. I don't know, maybe not. And I thought if I do this, I'd like to do it on this doublespeak, newspeak, and the inability for people to pay attention, because that's where we are. And no one I know has done that yet. So I thought, I can do that. So I've already started with these classes that we've had with Rick. Now, this will be the fourth one. All right, so now how does that tie to reality? Here it is, headlines. Now, these headlines came out last night. Headline from the New York Post. You can find this on the internet. Quote, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are hypocrites. Abdicate or stay. End quote. Meaning pick one. Which is it? So here is, I'm going to read this verbatim. Quote, how's this for quitting your job? Abandon every aspect you hate while continuing to reap all the benefits you love. This, in effect, is what Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have done. In a statement loaded with confusing doublespeak. This is what the article says. They're using the term that we reintroduced weeks ago. In a statement loaded with confusing doublespeak. I'll tell you what the statement is when we come back, and we're going to dissect this. Wow, class, this is no kidding. So as soon as I started mentioning what was happening with royalty and doublespeak and using the term doublespeak in an article from the New York Post, Rick got disconnected. Bang.
Just like that. Just like that.
So I'm
sitting here and I'm disconnected. No battery. Welcome to CenturyLink and the BS of... this is wrong.
Be careful. Be careful, Rick. They're hoping that we'll say something that will get us thrown off the air permanently, so be very careful.
I understand. Right. I got it. It's wrong.
All right. Let me continue.
And especially with my level of intellect, it's wrong.
So here, I'm going to start the article over again. We have about 25 minutes or so, and we'll discuss this. And I mentioned there was a scandal, an international scandal. This is it. So New York Post came out last night. Quote, how's this for quitting your job? Abandon every aspect you hate while continuing to reap all the benefits you love. This, in effect, is what Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have done. In a statement loaded with confusing doublespeak, the couple wrote, in part, we intend to step back as senior members of the royal family to work to become financially independent while continuing to support Her Majesty the Queen. None other than Queen Elizabeth is confused, according to BBC royal correspondent Johnny Diamond. In the statement blindsided the entire royal family, and they don't know what it means either. Will Harry and Meghan keep their royal titles? Work to become financially independent? How long is that going to take? Will they continue to get an allowance until that happens? Where will they live while in the UK? Frogmore Cottage? The estate gifted them by the Queen, which they spent another $3 million in taxpayer funds renovating? They say yes. Can't wait to hear what the Queen has to say about. This is also smug and gross, considering British taxpayers already spent $3 million on Harry.
Everybody wants the perks, but they're not willing to earn them.
This is also smug and gross considering British taxpayers already spent $3 million on Harry and Meghan's wedding. Since then, the couple has generated more headlines for feuding with William and Kate for exorbitant spending, $500,000 for Meghan's wardrobe in 2018-11, seeking the company and approbation of Hollywood stars for snubbing engagements, both public, last month's NATO reception at Buckingham Palace, and private, most recently the Queen's annual Christmas party, Christmas family gathering at Sandringham, than for any good works as royals. And who can forget last year's colossally tone-deaf documentary, Harry and Meghan, An African Journey, in which the newly world-famous, unbelievably wealthy Duchess, having met with children who suffer violence and deprivation, and had the gall to tear up in sympathy for herself, her plight as a new royal. So what we're talking about is Harry and Meghan are the poster children, the millennials, for the whining set. They are demanding. They are me first. They whine. And they might be the very focus of the end of royalty. And this is what happens when two people become married and they have different upbringings, different values, different histories. So we have, the article continues, that anyone who has watched The Crown, that's a video series on Netflix, knows what the historic trade-off of royalty is. Untold riches and a life of privilege in exchange for ribbon cutting, waving, and scrutiny. The latter may not always be easy, but it seems a small price. Scrutiny for fabulous wealth. And here we have these two millennials, and they take vacations, and then they take vacations from their vacations. Who pays for all of this? The royal family is in disarray. They are at the center of a worldwide scandal because of a mixed-race actress, former actress, and a guy that was a child of Diana's. There you have it. So there is the scandal. And you can, well, let me see if I can find another piece of information about them. But the people who are closest to them are livid at the betrayal, livid that the news was not announced to the Queen before they made it public in the media, meaning the two millennial children. Next article from Daily Mail. It's a masterclass. It's a masterclass in wanting to have your cake and eat it. Furious Buckingham Palace aides turn on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle after they stun the Queen by pressing the nuclear button and quitting the royal family. Royal family deeply disappointed. That's their words, deeply disappointed. I think they mean frosted and furious. Royal family deeply disappointed, as senior source says. The household is shocked and downright furious. Exasperate aide claims that people bent over backwards to give Harry and Meghan whatever they wanted. Devastated Windsors are still keen to support the couple despite being kept in the dark on their departure. Duke and Duchess announced they will carve out a progressive new role, end quote, in a message on social media. What the heck does that mean, a progressive new role? Now, what would you do if your child pulled a stunt like that? Okay, so According to this article, Harry and Meghan have today been blasted by aides who claim the royal family bent over backwards for them since they got together in 2016, only for the rebel couple to quit anyway without consulting the Queen, Prince Charles, and Prince William. The dramatic decision was taken without the knowledge of their family, who learned about the announcement as it broke on television news channels last night. The couple, who planned to split their time between Britain and North America, pressed the nuclear button and made the bombshell announcement just days after returning from a 6-week break in Canada. One exasperated aide said people had bent over backwards for them. They were given the wedding they wanted, the house they wanted, the office they wanted, the money they wanted, the staff they wanted, the tours they wanted, and had the backing of their family. What more did they want? That says it all. A smug, arrogant, childish, greedy pair of millennials. Good riddance. Good riddance. I can't believe it. I think they should be thrown out, saying, you know what? You said you're not part of the family. That house, nah. Oh, you don't have it anymore. You're out of here. You're out of here. And by the way, neither one of them is royal blue blood lineage. Anyway, neither one of those two. And Mrs. Finelli asked me so many times, and I don't want to answer this, but she said, what does she do that would cause Harry to give up everything, including the free ride to anywhere, anything, whatever he wants? She got him to give it up. Is that like, do you spell that moron? And how could you possibly look at those two millennials and say, oh, man, jeez, what a great image they're setting. Jet setting, burning holes through the atmosphere, just eating oxygen as they fly from vacation to vacation to vacation. A bunch of whiners. Rick?
I am being embarrassed for England.
I thought our millennials were bad. They set the gold standard.
Well, it just sets the tone for where we're going and how it's going to play.
Mm-hmm. Can you imagine being given a historic piece of land, a cottage, spending $3 million and tuning it up, and then blasting the family? And what they literally did was use double speak. And we want your money, and we don't want your money. We want to be financially independent, and we want your money. And we want to support the Queen, but we're not going to support the Queen. We are royalty, but we're not royalty. That is the epitome of doublespeak. Now, did I know this was going to happen weeks ago when we went on this crusade to teach people about doublespeak? Did we know? Absolutely not. Did we know until before last night? Absolutely not. But I thought, here it is. Here is exactly what we've been leading up to. And the media, the New York Post, has resurrected the term doublespeak. They have resurrected it 3 weeks after we resurrected it. Rick, and this will sound braggadocious, but I believe it's absolutely true. Instructors have called me saying that they've used terms on USA Preparers. And then, soon, a few days later, or the next day, those terms start trickling into the media. They start trickling into the media.
Well, that's one of the reasons why the military has always been interested in me. I was always just slightly ahead of the curve, even in high school. And so I've been used. And I'm being used now. I couldn't even begin to tell you their names. And yet they're very present in my incomes and my position and struggle. Mein Kampf.
You know what's really interesting, Rick? I'm multitasking here at our studio at the farmhouse in Missouri. And just as you spoke, you were taken out. You were taken out just as you said that for about 3 seconds, maybe 3.5 seconds. I can see it on the screen, going across the screen right now. Class, I have a screen that shows blip by blip the transactions that go out from here and to here, where I am. And Rick was taken out twice today now. We're down to the last segment. Class, I don't know if we'll be doing any more of these double-speak classes, but my intent was, and Rick's, was to teach you that people are using words that they don't mean. They are trying to mislead you. They are trying to lie with intent. They are trying to obfuscate and confuse you. And so we threw a little bit of humor into this. We used words that don't make sense. We used sentences that were incomplete. All in the attempt to show you that, number one, many people don't listen. Many people don't understand. Like those children who are in the classes, whether they be at the high school level or later than high school, college level or university level or even farther. They have their phones. They're looking down. They're not paying attention. And so you and everyone else, all of us, including Rick and I, are subject to doublespeak. And we wanted to point out with some humor that you need to pay attention, or you can be a victim of it. And we exposed a scandal, a worldwide scandal, currently probably the biggest scandal on the planet, with these two TV show contestants. What's the TV show? Well, it's a new TV show. It's called The Planet's Biggest Loser, starring the world's most destructive couple. That's what it is. And why would they do this? Do you think it's for the greater good, or do you think it's because of me first? I think it's because of me first. I think they are disgraceful.
I love that movie, Hot Fuzz, where everybody chants in for the greater good. That's a movie worth watching, Hot Fuzz.
The latest announcement is that they mentioned this to the Queen, and she wanted some time before the public announcement. And what did these two me-firsters do? Social media announcement. Now, I'm not crazy about having a queen. I'm really not. But I do think they were supposed to be a family that people could look up to for honesty and integrity, at least at some level. Some level. That has been absolutely destroyed by these two greedy poster children for what's wrong with society, millennials. It is disgraceful. Absolutely. And if I had a child who pulled a stunt like that, absolutely out of the will immediately. Immediately. Any comments?
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Why? Why? Because this may be our last broadcast? Is that right? Well, I've been fired 7 times on the radio. It won't be the first. And, you know, Rick, there are fewer and fewer of us left who are willing to expose the truth.
Well, the truth varies. That's the other part of this equation. Please understand that I'm not absolute, and I know I don't know. Now, with that said, the truth is nebulous. You can't ever truly know the absolute truth because our capacity to understand is limited. Like looking at a fence, you only see one side of it. You can't see the other side. You make an assumption that it's the same color, but that's not necessarily true. And that's where physics is limited. It really does not have the answers because it works on constructs like space and time that are not actually real.
Rick, so let's talk about the solution to this. What do we do? Now, from my perspective, one of the things that we're not doing very well is reading. That's too hard. Too hard to read. It's like words on a page. You have to turn the pages. You know, it's much easier to just pull that lever on that Easy Boy and then just watch the blue screen. That's easier to read.
Reading dynamics, scanning the page and picking out keywords. Good luck with that.
Well, okay, I believe that is something where we are lacking.
Well, then you lose the art of romance in writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and interesting that you say that. Gwyneth Isaacs is absolutely brilliant. Her lexicon is incredible. Her writing skills are up there with the finest writers in the world, for sure. She writes about, piracy and, romance novels, and I'm not interested in reading about romance per se. But her ability to deliver the printed word is incredible, and yet she's having a great deal of difficulty selling her books. Incredible difficulty because people don't read. And that's one of the reasons why I don't know if I want to publish my book, because I don't know if anybody would read it. Seriously. But I am interested in pursuing more information, learning for my own purposes about why people don't pay attention. So I don't know, class, if we're going to have any more of these doublespeak classes, but I hope we prove the point with breaking news on the subject, to the point, connecting the dots. Rick, thanks so much for being with us today.